John, if you just let us know what sports did you participate in, like, and how has UC affected you in sport?
So my main sports been football and rugby, a little bit of tennis here and there. But obviously since having UC, stroke Crohn's, which is a little bit undetermined at the moment.
Nothing like a good diagnosis.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, football being the main one. How does that affect me really with football? I used to find it difficult spending a long time on the pitch. That used to kind of make me a little bit anxious. But the 45 minutes of the first half, even leading up to the game, any bit of nervousness that I would feel would turn my stomach, and I'm sure you've all experienced that. It's quite distressing, really. And then what I would have to do is let the referee know that at any point during the game he could see me running off the pitch to go to the toilet. Fortunately, that didn't happen because my approach to the game would be essentially try not to eat too much, so therefore my pouch would be really full, and yeah, so it would be eating just enough to kind of get me through the first half, but obviously not take it on too much, so my pouch would be too full and I would have to run off the pitch.
How did that make you feel, having to discuss that or bring that up to the ref or fellow teammates then? What sort of...
To be honest, not overly difficult, because a lot of my teammates knew the condition. I've always made people aware of it, really, more so maybe in a jokingly way, just as a toilet talk. And yeah, it's quite easy, actually. I find it quite easy to talk about. So it didn't make it that difficult from that perspective. What I would say is that watching what I ate before the game would have some impact on me during the game, because obviously you get those fatigue levels and you haven't got the enough energy in you to be able to perform at peak standard. So sometimes if you're very lethargic and fatigued, that would be the hardest thing for me, is competing with not enough food in your body for the pure worry of running to the toilet. So that was the hardest thing around sport for me, is actually the right amount of food in order to sustain enough energy for the game, but then not too much, so I'd be running off the pitch. I found that very difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be one of my barriers of late. So I used to do athletics. I was, I don't really know if you say national level. I was ranked like 4th for Northern Ireland in decathlon and 12th for Ireland, and I was in the top 40 for the UK. But amongst that, I do triathlons, I do rock climbing. As you can tell, being a PT, I was pretty much doing every sport. But for me, one of the most difficult things, certainly looking at cycling and triathlon, was how do I, in the longer races, fuel that? And it's just a massive trial by error. It almost made me give up the sport. But I think initially, whenever I had my first operation and I had a colostomy bag, there was no even discussion about sport. I think I remember all the guys from my course coming to visit me in hospital, and I didn't think that I'd changed, and it wasn't until everyone looking at me with severe concern.
Yeah,
I was weighing like 50 kilos, and
just hope the wind don't blow you over.
Last time anyone seen me, I was like 80 kilos, and now I've dropped like 30 kilograms in the space of like 3 weeks. But yeah, it was one of those things. When I was in that state, I was talking to the guys and I was like, I am never competing again. And that was actually quite a bitter pill to swallow at the time. But since then, I've competed. I'm never going to be pushing top level or into a sort of high level of competition again. I just can't at the minute figure out a way how to handle that training load. So for those of you that don't know me, last year I was training for an Ironman, and I probably didn't train right, but then that's one of the beauties of our journey, is like relearning how we're supposed to train. What I found was I would hit plateaus, or I'd hit stages in my training where I felt good, and then I'd want to take it to that next level. And as soon as I would try and push, that's it. I'd have a viral infection, and that'd be me for like 6 weeks. Literally bedded down for at least 10 days, and then not able to train for, you're talking 5-6 weeks, almost like you're getting that overtraining syndrome or accumulation method, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But yeah, that can be difficult. I mean, I don't know how have you felt, because I know you've had a few ups and downs lately.
Well, for me, I mean, this is me, so October the 22nd, I had surgery to go back to permanent ileostomy from previously having a J pouch. So the recovery, the last few months have been very, very difficult, even though the decision of the surgery was taken out of my hands. But obviously now, as you know, I'm on exercise rehab at my local base at your establishment, and I'd say things are going swimmingly well, touch wood, even though I have a prolapse stoma, which was unexpected. That was due to a blockage post-surgery. I feel like I've managed to put the weight back on, which is always a challenge with such a disease. And yeah, it's just the training is knowing enough to kind of push yourself enough, but not go too far where you kind of creep and push over the edge. And then in essence, that would be a detrimental effect. So it's slow, excuse me a second. So it's slow kind of building up, slow build up, but it's taking the time to understand that rest is just as important as the training. So at the moment, it's going really well. The weight's coming back on with the food. I feel like I can eat a lot more than what I could with a pouch whilst having the stoma, and the things stay a lot longer in my body, so I'm getting the nutritional value from whatever I'm eating as well. So that makes a big difference as well. I'm not rushing to the toilet 12-15 times a day. As you know, that's not exaggeration. That's pretty normal for a pouch.
We both had those conversations in work.
Oh, a magnitude of times, yeah, definitely. The plus side as well as having the stoma is that I've not had to take codeine phosphate, which again can act as, it can make you feel very lethargic, and noloperamide. So touch wood, everything seems to be going better post-surgery. But yeah, it's still in a massive adjustment, so, and I'm still getting used to the training aspect again with having a stoma. But saying that, I think that only time will tell. It's, like I said, it's getting better, and hopefully after the next surgery for the prolapse stoma, I can actually move on with my training again, and yeah, actually get to maybe compete in whatever sport I want to pick up again.
I mean, what would you say now? So, like, we get a lot of questions, well, I see a lot of questions. We personally get them ourselves at the minute.
Yeah.
Talking about, I've just been diagnosed or I've just had surgery. And probably a little bit speaking maybe even to yourself, like whenever you first got diagnosed or first had to go through those surgeries, like what advice would you give to that person? Like just starting out, when they're like, am I ever going to do this again?
I'd say, well, the first thing is just to remain as positive as you can. It's very difficult to accept, first of all, especially if you're going to go to a colostomy bag. It depends on age, and obviously I was 24 when I had the colostomy bag, and again I was very, very ill. So it was really, the choice was taken out of my hands, and it's quite hard to accept as not so much a vain person, but as someone who kind of appreciates themselves aesthetically, tries to look good, and being a PTI, as you know. We kind of have this stigma of yeah, exactly, yeah. But you've got to remain positive. It's generally for the better. Think of all the bad experience you've had previously because of the UC, because of the Crohn's, and the light. Basically, the better you will feel post-surgery. Now, it's difficult, like I said, it's difficult to accept the fact you can have a colostomy bag, but it does make life a lot easier with regards to going out places without worrying about the toilet too much, spending longer away from the toilet, and just generally feeling better in yourself, not always run down because things are passing through your body so quick. You're not actually getting any nutritional value from your food. It's just straight in one end and straight out the other. Sleeping better through the nights without having to worrying about getting up to go to the toilet. So you just got to remain positive, really, and know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Say it again.
You never struggle to have something to start a conversation with.
No, absolutely. It's a debilitating disease, and I think that having the surgery, not that I'm very pro surgery, don't get me wrong. I think if there's any medication out there that obviously with the step forward that they've taken through Crohn's and colitis now with the research, I think with the fecal transplants and all the different medication they come out with, it's moving in the right direction to stay away from surgery, because ultimately no one wants to be cut into pieces and then obviously have the colostomy back. But for me, it worked. It made me feel 1,000 times better, if that's even possible. But I knew then as well that I would have a reversal surgery, which really didn't turn out the way I hoped it had, and therefore I'm back to where I was. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can definitely get back to training to a high standard if that's where you are. You can get back to doing your active daily living tasks without being in pain, without worrying about the toilet, without feeling fatigued all the time. So yeah, definitely. I think, like I said, I'm not always pro surgery, but for me it worked. And the sport should never have to stop. It's just managing your time around.
All right, guys, I hope you got something from that today. Me and John's got to go back to being dads now and sort out some 3-year-olds.
Get him to bed.
All that fun and games. But yeah. Concludes today's episode. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to press the like button down below, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're going to be backwards and forwards updating you with more information on Crohn's and colitis and generally sharing our story. So I will see you guys soon.